All right, if you've seen any of my comments on Reddit, you'll see that one of the things that I talk about a lot is kind of depends on your use case and a pretty good understanding of what users are going to get out of the system. So the fact that it referenced that, that's pretty good. All right, this morning is a little test example project with the new flow mode interface on ZeroWidth. I thought it'd be fun to try and take some of the comments I've been making on Reddit around RAG and designing language model-based solutions and try and make a pretty simple version of a chatbot or something that can talk and sound like me and make Reddit comments for me. What I've done to start is basically take every post that I've commented on and the comments and just put them in a pretty simple spreadsheet. There's not a ton of examples here, but it should be good enough for us to get something at least feasible and explain a little bit around the moving parts of a basic RAG system. Here we've got each post, the kind of user that wrote something or a question, and then my comments on the right here. And we're going to bring these into ZeroWidth. We're going to make something from scratch. We're going to try it out and see how well it works. There's probably an argument to be made before I get started that this kind of question and example answer format might be better suited for fine tuning versus a RAG setup. But for the sake of this little demo and test, let's just see how far we can get without having to edit a language model or fine tune anything and keep it as flexible as possible. So back into ZeroWidth, I'm going to make a new project. We're going to call this my Reddit bot. I'll hit create. And we can come down here into agent flows and make a new one. We'll call this Pete ZeroWidth bot, and we'll start blank. Let me move my face out of the way of the corner of the button there. Great. All right, here we kind of have our canvas. I'm going to dismiss some of these menus because we're just really going to focus primarily on the flows section of the workbench today and maybe a little bit on knowledge management. There's a bunch of other features and things coming, API calls, help with defining your project, but for today we're just going to kind of stick here. In ZeroWidth, the way it works to configure and design with language models is we have this kind of node and link interface. So I'm going to drop down an input node and I'm going to grab an output node. And then we're going to connect things together. There's little helpers that kind of help you draw lines between things. And then right here in the interface, we can try it out. In this case, it's not going to really work because I connected the full message conversation to the output. So let's connect maybe the most recent message to the output and try that again. We've made a very, very simple chatbot that says exactly what we say back to us. Right? What we really need to do here is grab a language model. Let's grab a kind of simple, not super overly configurable one and put it in the middle instead. I'm going to click this gear and just choose 4.0 for the sake of getting things started and hit save. Now we have our kind of input data, the messages or the conversation coming from the kind of front end of this, this experience or bot, going through language model and responding. So I can back up to here, and now we should be getting a quick response from GPT 4.0. Right? This is essentially a vanilla use of a language model. I could switch this if we want to another model from a different provider. Let's just leave it on OpenAI for the time being. All right, what we need to do is prompt our language model with a system prompt or an instruction on how to behave, what it needs to do to kind of set its role up for this particular purpose. So I'm going to create a prompt here and click on the gear to open this menu. And make an instructional message. We're going to talk directly to the language model and say, you are a bot representation of Pete on Reddit. Let's just leave it like that. Actually, maybe we'll give a little bit of background information. Co-founder of ZeroWidth, and see how well that does. Save and close. Now with this simple LLM kind of node module here, if I connect this up, it's going to take the place of it. What I need to do is kind of merge the conversations that are coming from the front end with this instruction. And when I do that is via a kind of arrange conversation node. So this lets me say, all right, I want the prompt to come first. Then I'm going to add all of the messages from the conversation and take that new list of messages and spit it out the other side. So we're just kind of setting an order and sequence to make sure that every time this language model runs, it's going to first get this instructional message, which is coded and tagged in a very specific way so that it responds to it and listens to it. And then we have the messages from the conversation. So I can back up and rerun things. And it now is playing the role, right? I've given it a 1-sentence description, so it doesn't know probably even what ZeroWidth is, but that's okay. Yeah, it's talking about ZeroWidth characters, which one of the reasons the name exists. All right, let's add some data to this. How do we get our comments into ZeroWidth to use? Well, I could say like copy and paste this and go into here and paste in a bunch of examples. With the huge size of context windows, lately you could fit a lot of examples. You could probably easily fit my like 25 Reddit comments into the context window of a single language model. But that's not super scalable. And also, I doubt you want to be using all 128,000 tokens of GPT-4o in every request, because that would get expensive as well. So what we're going to do is design a system that collects the most relevant handful, maybe we'll start with 5, questions and answers based on the user's question, and provides that dynamically into the language model's instructions. So it has the answers it needs at the time of responding based on the user's question. That's the kind of foundational step of doing RAG. So in doing that, we need to actually come back out to our project. I'll move my little face here and make a new knowledge base. We're going to call this, oh, look it, my test ones are here. Let's use that name, Chatbot comments. Perfect. I'm going to leave this all blank. I'm also going to keep this just as a pretty simple model selection of embeddings 3 and trim the embeddings down to 256 just to keep things quick and easy. In our knowledge base manager, essentially what this tool is an ability to upload your own information, embed it, create a vector database of that information, as well as the kind of unvectorized original data, and use it within the contents of a flow for designing an agent. So I don't have a file really. I've got this big CSV file, but that's not going to be super friendly. I've reformatted it here so that I have kind of a post, a comment, and then a little delimiter of 3 hyphens before next section. So I'm going to actually go to raw text, and I'm just going to select all of this and copy it and paste it. There's probably going to be a ton of empty rows on the bottom of that, aren't there? Yeah. Let's do this in a way that Google Sheets doesn't add 1,000 empty new lines on the end of my text. There. Let's go to there. And we'll paste that in and then go next. And I'm going to split this by delimiter. Our kind of chunking tool lets you do a couple of different strategies here. There's a lot more to come. But you can see as I kind of enter in the delimiter that I had, it identified I've got 23 comments in this database, and it has each one with the post and then the comment in this same structure, kind of matching each pair of rows here, right? If I were to change this delimiter to something else, I don't know, period, you can see those different broken up chunks. And maybe I could even play with chunk overlap so that there's some shared text across these different chunks. This whole process has so many different design decisions to it and aspects of the RAG setup that are really, really dependent on knowing what shape your information is in, how is it typically stored, and what kind of questions are going to be asked of it. For this, I don't think it makes sense to overlap the chunks because I have a pretty discrete pair of information that's relevant for a single chunk here. It's also a decent size, and it's not too much text, not too little text. So I have a pretty clear way that I want to chunk this based on both the design of my data and the expected use of this data. It's questions and answers, and I'm going to use it as questions and answers. It's a pretty literal organization that would be pretty easy for us to run with. So I get a little preview here of each of the chunks. Make sure there's no like completely empty ones. Those all look fine. And we're just going to add them to the knowledge base. Alrighty. Almost there. So this is uploading each one of those bits of text, putting it through an embeddings model, storing it in a vector database, and now we have the results, right? I can come in here and edit the actual individual chunk if I want to. I could change the content that is actually being indexed and embedded in case maybe I want to only put the question or the post through the embeddings and have that be what's searched against instead of the question and the answer. I'm going to leave this all as blank and not add any metadata or anything. We kind of leave our knowledge base as is for the sake of this kind of quick demo. I'm going to pop back over into our current bot, and we need to have some node that lets us search the knowledge base. So we're going to grab this one, search knowledge. Click the little gear and select our knowledge base we just made. Let me move my face again. Of Reddit comments. We need to determine some method of search. We need to provide it some search text. That's red because it's required. And we have a little error up here as well. So I'm just going to grab the content of the most recent user message. This is like step 0 of designing a RAG system. Maybe let's just start with naive RAG or simple RAG, where we're basically using the most recent message from the user as the search text into the knowledge base. It's going to get embedded, turned into a vector, used to search all the other vectors, which will then be grabbed their irrelevant original text to then output as some text or JSON chunks or a knowledge object, which this is just a kind of key value pair of that knowledge that is prepped so I can more easily do this with my instruction and make that section of the instruction dynamic to based on what this returns. So I'm gonna hit save and close. And maybe I'll adjust this, matching this, actually, example post. I don't want this to respond matching the post because that's not something I wrote. I want it to respond matching the comment. We're gonna hope that that is enough to kind of pick up on the keyword of comment in each one of those. So I'll hit save and close. And then for the sake of this, I'm actually gonna open up the demo page and get something a little bigger for us to try out. Let me put myself up there for now. There we go. So we can kind of go back through the flow and see the moving parts and steps here. We have our original input text of the most recent message content. My message is saying hello. Again, just a kind of array of one message when this starts off. We're going to search that knowledge base using the text hello. By default, we're just going to get one chunk back, and we're going to take, no matter what comes back, at least one item. We can see here in the outputs the actual post that it selected from searching that. And if we close this, you can see how those then go into the prompt. And if we check out the prompt, we can see now that there's a knowledge being passed in, and the output of the prompt has respond matching this comment example post and that little chunk from the knowledge base. So we did RAG, right? We retrieved, we put it into the prompt, and that prompt then went and got arranged with the conversation so that what the language model actually got was the instructional text with my chunk in there. Oops. And then my hello as a user, right? And this one is marked as a system message, which is a kind of special way to tell the language models to respond and listen to this as a kind of a direct instruction versus this message being from the user. And then finally, the model generated an output and it said, hey, how can I help you today? So like, let's ask it something that might show up in a Reddit comment. Which is best? All right, if you've seen any of my comments on Reddit, you'll see that one of the things that I talk about a lot is kind of depends on your use case and a pretty good understanding of what users are gonna get out of the system. So the fact that it referenced that, that's pretty good. These are not things that I've mentioned though. all of these. So this is quite a lot of information coming from what I'd say the base foundational model. This is a lot of GPT-4o talking and not much me talking, and that's okay. We've only provided it one example. So maybe let's go back to our flow here and get a little number slider out and say, let's give it, I don't know, 6 comments that I've written and see if that does any better. So I'll refresh this, ask the same question, and see how well things respond this time. That's something I've said right there in a comment. This isn't too bad. Most flexible and reliable. That's something I've said. Let's maybe adjust our instruction a little bit to say, ensure your tone or point of view and expertise comes from the same place and opinion of the comment responses to the posts above. Just to kind of nudge it a little bit further. Match the grammar, word usage, terminology, etc. Just hit that save there. I'm gonna just refresh really quick. Sorry, my face keeps getting in the way on this. That's pretty good. My RAG isn't working on my data. Let's ask it something super vague. That's not terrible, right? That's really not terrible. If we were to back out of here, maybe let's make a little switch really quickly. Let's make a little true false setup and a condition and say we're gonna pass that through as true. Actually, no, instead of a condition, we're gonna just use a gate. This is a little more advanced than I was planning on going, but that's okay. What this little gate module is going to do, or gate node, is gonna allow us to kind of shut off the prompt from being provided at all. So when this is false, this chain is going to be disconnected. So all that the language model will get is the message, the hello. So if we pop this open, we say hi. Well, here, let's refresh so we get a completely fresh cache there. Pop this open and say hi. And they ask something like, who are you? The model has no instructions whatsoever right now. If we take a look at the messages that were sent in, you can see all that was here. We have my first hi right there. Then we have my hello, how can I assist you today, from the first response from the agent, and then my who are you, right? There's no instruction. I completely disconnected it. So if we rewind to here and we ask the same question that we asked there, it's typing for a while. It's a pretty different response style than my Reddit comment, right? This one with the instruction and this one without the instruction. If I come back and just turn that on, rewind and ask again, now we should get something that sounds a little bit more like me. Yeah, it really depends what you're trying to accomplish. Not terrible for, what are we at, 20 minutes? Things that we could do next. Well, how would you change this? How would you improve this? Well, every time we are searching, we're just using the most recent message content. So that sounds great. If every question that is coming into this bot is a question, or every message is a question, that'll be great. It'll use this text to search the knowledge base and get something relevant. But if I just say, thanks, it still searched that knowledge base on the word thanks. Right? That's not super useful to the topic of the conversation, especially if I say something like, wait, tell me more about that. Here's a completely contextually loaded question, right? The knowledge searching step had no information about what I was actually asking about, right? If I go to search knowledge here, you can see its input was just, wait, tell me about that. So the chunks that it pulled from the knowledge base are now not at all relevant to the that I was talking about. So some of the things that you can then do is start to build in something that says like, well, maybe instead of just using the most recent message content, we need to drop down another language model that is tasked with, let's say, analyze the following conversation and use it to determine search text to identify relevant information that can help with the user's line of questioning. And maybe we want to prep this with a similar setup, right? Now we can move this over there, that's fine. We're gonna prompt a language model. Let's use the same one. It could be a different one, it really doesn't matter for this case. And its output is gonna be the search text. And maybe just for ease of use, or clarity, I guess, for the model here, I'm gonna do another instruction at the end that says, begin analysis, respond only with the best search text for this conversation. Now I'm doing that because I'm gonna kind of wrap these messages with an instruction and another instruction. Now, a lot of language models don't let you do this. I know Palm and Gemini, I think, are pretty strict around having every other message must be user, agent, user, and you can't just slot in an instruction anywhere. But OpenAIs are a little more flexible in my experience. And so let's see how well this works. I wanted to make sure it didn't get tricked into responding to the user, since I'm kind of having it listen to these instructional messages. We could play around with other ways of reformatting that to see how well that works. But just for the sake of this, let's actually disconnect our output and connect it to here. And we'll disconnect that too. Oh, it's gonna need us to connect it, that's fine. All right, now, if we pop this open, and let's just LLM. Oh, we gotta refresh to get a fresh cache there. Let's see what it's gonna say back. Yeah, all right. Now we're responding with search text, right? I still have this connected, but the language model that's writing our user response isn't actually being used for the output, right? We're grabbing the output out of our search text. So if we come back down here and connect this one instead, let's rewind this and say, which LLM is best? Now, response time is going to increase a little bit, right? Because we have to wait for this language model to write some search text, use that search text to then tee up the next language model to respond. But I can say something very contextually loaded. And if we just grab, let's use our little monitor here. What was the search text it generated? It decided to search the knowledge base for a comparison of top language models based on me asking this. Right? So now we have a better method for generating that search text that is going to continue to make sure that the conversation is relevant while the user starts to talk more naturally and contextually to previous parts of the conversation. Because if we didn't support that, it's pretty easy to disappoint that user and force the bot to kind of rely on only what it already found in its conversation history and potentially some bad distracting chunks in that instructional text to then generate the next message. Here we have something that is a little more reliable. Now there's lots of different names for this. I've called this kind of agentic variable RAG. I just think that it is useful to have this really simple, quick responding, not super high token count way of keeping the conversation fresh. There's a bunch of other techniques and methods that you can play around with and explore here. Like I just said, generate search text. That might not be the best search text for what is representative in my actual data set. So instead of just generating search text, maybe we could say, format your search text in the shape of a hypothetical Reddit comment using a structure like post. Oops. All right, sorry. So instead of just write search text, which might result in something that kind of feels like it should go into Google or a search engine, because the entire comment is what is currently embedded and the post in that vector database, it might be better for us to format what is being searched in the same shape and style of what we know already exists in that database. And this is where you kind of get into what people will call HIDE, or hypothetical document embedding search, I believe is what that's currently standing for, where I'm having a language model imagine a document that exists, and then I'm going to go search for that document, hopefully find something that is relevant in that vector space, in that kind of semantic space, and get something back. So I'll hit save and close. Let's rewind to here. This is going to take a little longer. Let's see, did that save? There we go. So now we have an imagined post and comment, right? That's pretty good. Maybe tell me more about that. Let's do that, another kind of contextual question. We still have a pretty reliable there post and comment. Again, this is the hypothetical document that we're having this language model imagine based on looking at our conversation so far. Then I'm going to search for a comment that looks like that using the vector embedding, grab 6 of my comment history, provide those as examples in this instruction to another language model to then generate the output. So we have 2 LLMs inside of what people might call one agent or one piece of AI. And that's honestly not really that many still. You might get further here and say, okay, if this conversation gets super long, maybe let's trim it and only search based on the most recent, I don't know, 2,000 tokens worth of previous messages. Or maybe if the conversation gets really long, I want another language model summarizing those older bits of the conversation. Maybe I want another model here, kind of post-flight, that looks at what was generated and sees how well it was reflected in this comment that was provided, or the collection of comments that were provided, to help prevent hallucination. So I can say, hey, how grounded was the output here? Did you actually find it in this context that I provided you, or are you making it up? Is it coming from the foundational model? In which case I don't have much control over it or reliability within it. There's a whole lot you can do. And ZeroWidth is designed to make that super, super flexible. We're constantly adding more and more nodes to our little list here that you can use. Some of them are really, really foundational, basic stuff like gates. And some of them are a little bit more high level, like the ability to hit an API or build a function or check that a tool was called or run something through an embeddings model. Also, you can build some pretty custom layouts and then share those really easily. Like this demo page is live, and I could send this to a colleague and say, hey, how about we build something like this? Oh, my rag is broken. Maybe I'll respond to some Reddit comments with this today. I don't know. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you want access, sign up for our wait list. We'll be rolling it out to more folks in beta testing in the coming weeks and months. If you have any questions, drop in the comments below. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Bye.